I welcome everyone to the training workshop for journalists on women's rights, reproductive health and global development priorities. This training is being co-convened by UN FPA Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific and UN Women Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific.
But a number of recommendations were made in 1995. One of them would be for regular interactions with media personnel, but including media owners, not just journalists, to encourage the creation and use of non-stereotype, balanced and diverse images of women in the media. Journalists will often tell us when we ask them about what's being covered, certainly in print media or visual media, that in fact, yesterday in my own sphere, someone from Latin America, Bolivia, sent me a link. Oh, it's in there. And this is like 3 hours later after we had a media conference. We had journalists from France asking us interviews. This story has moved.
I want to say from the outset how delighted I am personally, and UNFPA is also very happy to be partnering with UN Women, to be working with the media to try to present our case to you so you can understand why we're doing what we're doing and why we think it's important for your media to be on top of these issues and to be presenting them.
Smell?
Not yet. Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile.
Say what your expectations are. So 1 more minute.
We're still fighting for human rights, for women's rights. So is it
women's rights and let everybody have a respect each other.
To change their life, suffer from violence and rapes, any type of domestic violence in Malaysia, how to intervention the government in Malaysia.
How it is going on and happening
It sounds like how to implement human rights in the context of different issues.
But can we have something like to review that way of advocacy?
The study was conducted across 6 countries, Bangladesh, Cambodia, China, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea and Sri Lanka, in 9 sites in those countries. And there's no single cause that we could stop that is going to end violence against women, but it's addressing these clusters of factors that we think is really important.
One missing link that we point out in Pakistan as well, and I can see over here as well, like we lack support system for violence victims. That's why the women who are traditionally bound
The violence, because recent years, within 2 years, we make there many violence.
You have about 4 or 5 minutes to talk about how these boxes have impacted you.
That's what was went forward, and there was no threat.
On top of the island, the land that we can see from the island is like the direct violence that we can see. Under the water, we know that there is land keeping the island up, right? An island can't exist unless there's also land up. Shouting, eliminate. There was one in the back. Everyone get up. Find 5 people. Sit down and get with them very quickly.
Also NGOs and also politicians at the same time, and I've been running
the founder of Pavina Foundations for 15 years from now.
And certainly in your work with the Pavina Foundation, you show that very clearly, how you apply knowledge and action, commitment to get to action and to
Today, in the morning, we'll be talking about sexual and reproductive health and rights in Asia and the Pacific. And in addition to, and also we'll be talking about contraceptive services and information, including for adolescents.
In your country or region. That's from what you know. If you know a lot or you know only a little bit, whatever, you can share and learn from each other. That's from your perspective and how sexual and reproductive health and rights is talked about in your country. What are the pressing issues?
Southeast Asia, come here.
That abortion is actually, you suppose this is the knowledge.
Because we know that China has found that and we're going to focus those report backs for the time being on these two issues. Within the media, what are the obstacles you face on reporting on sexual and reproductive health and rights? And then what are some of your strategies?
So in Laos, Thailand, Myanmar, Vietnam and Indonesia, we have sufficient media room for reproductive health because we don't have enough space for coverage, and reproductive health is now a hot issue.
Another thing in the Melanesian countries, a lot of people don't read and write, so bringing the message across to people is a fair bit of a problem as well.
The strategies that have been used in the region is that I think Iran is way ahead because they have dedicated TV and radio organizations
to educate the media themselves, to stand up against judgment and to know that there are certain things they can't talk about and how to deal when other people attack them for what they're doing. This is looking at all the demographic health surveys of countries globally. Often a double standard. Young girls are expected to stay pure and chaste. Sometimes it may be acceptable for older adolescents, but definitely not younger adolescents. Issue that the teachers themselves, they're part of the community, they don't want to talk about sex.
We ask you to pick one of these misconceptions and get into groups and spend maybe about 15 minutes to think about how specifically you will argue against or challenge this misconception.
If I'm pregnant, then might as well go have an abortion. So here, you just kill the fact, increase or decrease.
The youth says we say from 12 to 24.
Group of people that it doesn't increase premature sex, it just makes them more informed.
As for promiscuity,
It's a lot of lists, but we just select only 6. In general, less communication between about reproductive health, about the father to the son and the mother to the daughter. So less of awareness of reproductive health. Second is right to choose children, how many children. a man has more right than women how many children they choose. It is one of the reproductive health.
Our first argument to argue against this is that we think that banning legal abortions or contraceptives would lead to unwanted pregnancies, which would lead to illegal abortions.
The policymakers and parents, or even take support of religious groups to argue about this topic.
So these back three tables, you're getting some specific stories we just pulled out of a random newspaper. You see articles where there's blatant stereotypes, where there's subtle stereotypes, where there's missed opportunities for making connections between issues, or any articles which are particularly gender aware.
No, I would like to know how they perhaps, of course, the victim doesn't have to defend herself. All she has to say is, fuck, I was angry.
And more common than that.
Began to just release the name of the girl, where she worked, and how is she, and also some information about the family, and even the
agenda of how we think about development and sustainable development. So these were the MDGs, right? The Millennium Development Goals. How gender equality can inform our understanding of what it truly is sustainable development.
For primary educations, families they have the 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, but they can afford to give educations to all children, so they must choose for the boy.
Must find out the risk group first, and among the risk group, I think the sex worker are the most vulnerable groups. So we must talk with them. I mean, we must have some campaigns.
One of the things that, from a broader perspective, was the lack of specificity in relation to this, which has an impact on how to measure it.
Under each of the 3 critical areas. So when the proposed goal talks about freedom from violence against women and
Asia is a big region, so it's quite different depending on the sub-regions, but especially for Southeast Asia, migration is a big issue, especially for women, domestic workers. And I think that's my main point. We shouldn't, because it's the decision of women to say how many children or whether they want to have children or not to make. It's not to the government, it's not to men, it's to them. And that's the point about human rights.
Because China has gone farther than any other country in seeing this as a policy issue, as an issue of law and of policy, where couples are not permitted to have more than a certain number of children, mostly 1 or 2, depending on whether they live in city or countryside, but we call it the one-child policy.
Everybody against the Chinese one-child policy. I say, okay, if we have 4 million something population, and where these people go, what these people eating, how many energy we need. In China, maybe we could try another way, like if you have only 1 child, we, give you $2,000 per month to support this is right choice.
Make this last session, we want to bring it back to the personal level. We said when we started at the beginning that we see this workshop as a combination of
imparting skills and knowledge and information that you as journalists can use, may need in order to affect your journalism. And so we're going to do one more exercise where people are sharing your own ideas and opinions.
The media's role is to mirror what happens in the society rather than try to shape it.
Our job is to inform the public. We give them the information and let them decide for themselves. It's 50-50. I will explain it. We're here to agree and disagree. Media's role is to, yes, educate, inform people, but to make a change in a society is everybody's business.
I believe that the media should be the role in changing the society. I mean, of course, by doing that, we also mirror the facts and things that are happening.
I'm the 100%. Yeah. So this is the main job of media is to change people, to change the policymakers about how to create a betterment for people.
Excuse me, it's not about Iran. It's about
In appreciation of your participation, I would like to invite Roberta Clark, Regional Director of UN Women, to present a certificate of attendance.
Thank you. The way that you came and displayed us with Arabic. Thank you so much.
Also, Roberta, creator, initiator of the first in the world, maybe a daily Braille newspaper.
Thank you so much.
Bye everyone. Have a safe trip.
Thank you, communicator also.